Okay, so you want to get lean, shredded, abs. You want to look awesome. I'll teach you how. It's actually very simple. I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's very simple. And here are the steps. So, in order to become shredded or lean, you have to be in a calorie deficit, meaning that you're eating less energy than your body is using. Okay. So, first of all, you need to find out what approximately is your body fat percentage and roughly what body fat percentage do you want to get to based off of how you want to look. And then you need to, based off of your weight, calculate using math how much weight do you need to lose. And then decide on a time frame on how long you want to spend to actually reach your desired body fat. Now, the more you stretch out the time frame, the easier it's going to be, okay? And after you find out your daily required deficit based off of how long it's going to take you to lose X amount of weight, you can calculate, okay, if I want to lose 10 kg, that equals blah, blah, blah calories. Stretch out on this time horizon, that's X amount of calories deficit per day, okay? So then you'll find out how big of a deficit you need to be in per day in order to hit that goal within X time frame. But if that deficit turns out to be more than around 700 calories per day, you should definitely choose a longer time frame because that's really at that point where it's like it's too steep and you're just really going to struggle. Then you need to go onto a calorie calculator to find out or to estimate how many calories do you need to be eating per day to just maintain your weight because you're going to subtract your deficit from that amount. All right, so find a calculator, put in all the information, and then calculate your maintenance calories and then subtract the deficit. Then you'll find out what your daily calorie target is in order to shred. Okay. Now, once you start the shred, you want to be tracking your weight every single morning. And don't be too worried about weight changes day to day because it doesn't matter. What you want to do is put it into like an Excel sheet or something and then look at the weekly average weight and compare that to from 1 week to another week and then see what was the change from your average weight in this week to the next week, right? Because from day to day, your weight is going to change just based off of water retention. So to get accurate data, we need to see week to week, are we actually on track? And based off these numbers, we can also figure out whether you're actually on track or not. Which if you're not, that would mean that either you're not eating the amount of calories you're supposed to, or it means that the initial calorie estimate for how many calories you need to maintain your weight was inaccurate. Which if you have been eating the right amount of calories, we can just do some math and figure out, well, in that case, what is your actual real maintenance calories, okay? So that is the logistical steps you need to take. However, we also we're human, we need to make sure that we can actually stick to this and that we won't just fall off. So first of all, we want to make sure we're not crashing our hormones and we want to make sure we're maintaining muscle. So make sure you're eating very high protein on the cut. So I would say at least 2 grams per kilo of body weight. You should be getting at least around like 0.6 grams of fat per kilo. Fat is higher calorie per gram, but you want to get like that minimum amount to support your hormones and at least a few hundred milligrams of cholesterol. And then the remaining calories that you have, you want to put those all into carbs after you've covered those needs. And then all the carbs, you want to load them before and after your workout, have them as close to your workout as possible. Have that nutrient partitioning, maximum gym performance, maximum gains, retention, or even muscle gain if you're a beginner. You can definitely gain muscle in deficit if you're a beginner. All right. Now, you want to look at our daily calories as a budget. So imagine that each calorie is like $1. You want to think, how can we get the most satiety for each dollar? How can we get the most bang for our buck? So what we want to do is we want to eat very high volume foods. All right. So for example, that would be yogurt or strawberries Like, for example, strawberries, in a kilo of strawberries, there's only 330 calories. Now, compare that to, let's say, just 100 grams of butter has like 1,000 calories. Okay. So, foods are very different in terms of how much volume you can get for each calorie. Okay. And then there's a few other things that you can do as well to make it easier to stick to the deficit. For example, don't eat within the first couple hours of the day, because if you have a shorter eating window within that window, the time between the food you eat will be less and it will feel as if you're able to eat more food. Um, Also, drink a lot of water very frequently, especially right before you eat. You want to drink at least 1 glass of water before every meal. It's going to help fill your stomach up. And also, being dehydrated will make you feel more hungry. And speaking about being dehydrated, also make sure you get enough salt. So make sure to salt your food, because that will maintain your electrolyte balance and also will give you better pumps in the gym. Make sure you're able to retain more water in your muscles and things of that nature, since depending on how little food you're eating, you might become a bit depleted. So the salt can help with that. But you want to pair that with a lot of water as well. Also, you want to get as many steps as possible. So go for a lot of walks. That's my best recommendation. And if you get a lot of steps in, you can also track how many calories you're burning from those steps. And that might allow you to eat more, which will make it easier to stick to your deficit. And walking is also not very tiring. And also, you want to be making sure to stay busy with stuff, because a lot of times we just eat for dopamine because we're bored. But if you're staying busy with stuff, you won't have as much time to be thinking about food. All right. So if you do all these things and you do it properly, you will 100% reach your desired body fat percentage, and that's it. Also, one last thing is, when you're cutting, you don't want to be changing up your training at all. Some people say you want to be lifting higher reps, lighter weight, or training differently in some way when you're cutting. That's not true. You want to be training exactly like you would have been if you were eating more food. All right. So try and get stronger, or at the very least, lift as heavy as you were doing before.